Good evening, everybody. It's Mark Schwartz, County Manager. I'm going to welcome you all to this first community conversation with the Police Practices Group. And so certainly following the recent events in our country, focusing on policing and racial justice, the County Board had asked me to lead a review that would look into the Arlington County Police Department's practices and policies. And we are the first, you'll hear a lot more detail about this, but the first thing we're going to do is take a look at the current practices we have in Arlington and see how those compare with best practices. This external assessment is going to be led by Marcia Thompson and Dr. Julie Shedd. Both of them are here tonight. They have expertise in doing these kinds of assessments. And also the results of those assessments are going to be shared with the 15-member police practices group. And so the less I say, the better. The more you hear from them, the better. The police practices group, or as we refer to it, the PPG, has started their work already. They started meeting in early August, and they're going to conclude their work by the end of December.
So we have 15 members of the work, actually 16 members now of the work, of backgrounds and experience, and bringing a lot of really depth of information and connection with Arlington. And really what to think about them as kind of the steering group and representatives of the community that are asking the kinds of questions that we think that the rest of the community wants to know about. And so what each of the work groups is doing is planning at least one public session. Naomi mentioned this when she was talking about mental health, but where we'll be bringing in some speakers from around the country, different models, bringing in different new ideas, as well as having then an opportunity for there to be some public feedback on some of those thoughts and ideas. And that's going to be happening every 2 weeks for the next 2 months or so. So it'll start in 2 weeks with mental health, and then follow the 2 weeks after that, alternative dispute resolution, 2 weeks after that, civilian review board, and then 2 weeks after that will be traffic. And so what the groups are doing is they are setting up those meetings, figuring out which experts to bring in to talk to the community. They will also be then working through the feedback from the community and comparing that with some of the data that's coming out of the assessment that Marcia's team is doing, so that we're really bringing that data piece together with community feedback, so that recommendations, when they come together at the end, reflect both that, as she was saying, the qualitative and quantitative elements of what's happening. And so that we really are looking at 3 levels: the policy, how policy is being implemented, and how that policy and implementation is being experienced by members of the community. And so the purpose of this group is to then be able to bring all of that together.
And Julie, in addition to the community members here and some staff, can you also talk about the ex-officio members of the committee, or Mark? Sure. Or somebody?
I may not get the whole list, so Mark, if I miss one, please fill it in. But we do have the Commonwealth Attorney. We also have the County Attorney. The acting chief is on as ex officio. And then we have a couple observers. For instance, Mark and some other county staff have been participating in the meetings to be resource people, so that we have some answers to questions that are asked. I also should add that in addition to the one single meeting, there's going to be additional opportunity for each working group is going to be developing additional opportunities for community feedback in their area that is specific to their area, to make sure that we're reaching all of the necessary stakeholders.
There's a lot of support for the work of the PPG, but there's some people that are saying, why do we need this? Our police department's fairly good. We have a good, safe community. I feel good about the community I live in. What do you say to the folks that are asking the other side of the equation about why spend taxpayer money on this effort? And I throw that out to anyone.
Naomi Verdugo here. I will say that the Arlington County Police have been asking for co-responders from Department of Human Services ever since the previous co-responder program was dismantled. So the police in Arlington and in many other places are looking for other people who have the training to deal with people in psychiatric crisis. Some of what we're doing is responding directly to requests from police officers and the police force so that we can get experts dealing with people who are ill. It gets to a bigger issue of decriminalization of mental illness. And the police recognize that too, that they've sort of become the responders of last resort. And they, I think, are speaking up and saying they really want some experts to be able to respond to many of these calls.
If I could follow up from what Naomi just said, I think another thing to think about for those people who are asking why is the county paying to do something like this, I'd like to say that, I do this work again all over the country with departments, and some departments are compelled to do this because of certain circumstances or incidents that happen in their cities. And I would say, again, when I was approached to work in Arlington, I was happy and humbled, obviously, to work with the city because I practiced law in Virginia for so many years. But I was also excited that a department reached out that was not responding to an incident, but was being responsive to a national outcry of looking at themselves inward to find out if there are any concerns, but also to find out what they can do better. So I would say, this department may have concerns, but they didn't call for the assessment because they thought they had concerns. They said, we want to find out what our areas are, if we're doing a good job, and compare us to what, best practices are. So I think that that's a very progressive step that a lot of departments are taking right now during this time of community concern. So Arlington is one of those counties that I'm working with that actually asked to come in to have somebody do an assessment, and they weren't compelled to do it. So I've had a couple other cities I'm working with that are not on that same spectrum where they were actually compelled to do so. So I would say that to some of the folks who are asking that, this is a progressive move by a department to actually have someone come in and look at their practices, and they have no idea what our outcomes are going to be. So that's a very bold step that they took to have someone come in and look at their work. So.
Thanks. Did anyone else want to weigh in on that big question?
If I may, just briefly, we live in a diverse county. It's a small county geographically, but with a pretty big size population of over 200,000 people. Not everyone shares the same perspective about any part of the government. And so while we appreciate that a lot of people are happy with the police, there's some people who have some challenges with them. And so my impression of the county, having lived here nearly 20 years, is that the government tries to be responsive. And I view this to be a responsive move to voices that are being heard throughout the county. And we're making assessments. I don't think anyone's prejudged the outcome here. But looking at things is never a bad situation.